Hi everyone. Hope you're all having a great day. Looks like we've got 16 of you on here right now. If a few of you could just let me know that you can see me and hear me and everything's working properly, that would be great. Morning, Cam. Wonderful. Okay, looks like it's working for everybody. That's great. Feel free to let me know where you're joining in from. I always love to see how far away you all are. I'm here in Halifax. Hey, Tyler. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Awesome. Okay, so we'll probably get started. It's 12:30 here in Halifax, and that's the time we were meant to begin. So today is actually probably my last of these virtual regular webinars. We've been doing them since April or March even, as soon as COVID started. And now that things are returning a little bit more back to normal for the summer, we're going to be ramping down for these virtual regular online webinars. I think we're going to be doing less. I think there's only going to be about 2 in English a week and 1 in French. So I may or may not be doing them as regularly. I'm not quite sure what the schedule is going to look like, but definitely not 1 a week like I have been doing for the last couple months. So thank you so much for everyone for joining me on probably my last one for a little while now anyway. And we're going to finish off strong with the second part of our focusing in on the micronutrient series. And today we're going to be focusing on minerals. So for those of you who perhaps were joined with me last week on Thursday, we did the focus on vitamins, and this is sort of the second half of that series where we're going to be talking about minerals. As you all probably know, the micronutrients have those 2 in that category. So the micronutrients, they encompass the vitamins and the minerals, as opposed to the macronutrients, which includes carbohydrates, fat, and protein, which we also covered several weeks ago in the focusing on the macronutrient series. So if you're interested in seeing that, you can go and watch the recordings for those series as well. So before we get started, just a few things to go over with you guys today. The presentation that you're about to view is the intellectual property of the Department of National Defense. So please no attempts to reproduce this slide deck. Also, please use your own parental discretion. If any of you are still working from home and have children around, then just know that all of our webinars are intended for an adult audience, so just use your own discretion with that. We're also going to be respecting each other's privacy, so the chat is there for you to share your stories, ask questions, communicate with each other and with me, and I encourage that very much. So please do feel free to be as active as you'd like on the webinar, but just know that anything that's shared in the webinar is that person's story to tell, and it's private, and we won't be sharing it outside of this webinar with anyone else. All right, and lastly, like I mentioned before, all of our webinars are recorded and they will be available for later viewing online. So I'm going to send you a link now for, I believe it's the Kingston Health Promotion team has done a really good job of compiling them all. So I'm going to send you this link here, and you can go back and view any of the previous webinars, both with me and with other lovely health promotion specialists. So they're all posted there, and if you want to share them with your friends, you can do that as well. So keeping in mind this is recorded, and you can go back and watch it later, just so that it's always available for everybody. All right, so we have 2 statistics polls, one that we're going to do now and one at the end. And for these ones, I really would appreciate it if everybody could give me a response. I'm going to make it live now, and you can respond in the poll section on the right-hand side of your screen. And I'd just like to know what your affiliation is with the CAF community. This is used for our statistical purposes so that we have a good idea of who's watching and how we should tailor our webinars. So it's really much appreciated if everybody who's watching here today could make sure that they answer. The answers are completely anonymous. We have no idea which ones of you have responded in which way, so your names are not tied to your response in any way. So please do make sure that you answer that if you're able. Okay. Great. Looks like everybody has responded to that, which is wonderful. Thanks so much. So then we have one more, and that one we'll be doing at the end of the webinar, just to see sort of what you thought of it and whether it was applicable for you. So please do hang on the line until the very end to make sure that you've responded to those polls as well, and we can get all the information from you that we can. That would be great. All right, so now we're going to jump into the content of the webinar. And since I have quite a bit of nice pictures and words on my slides, I'm going to take off my video now so that you can better see the slides and read them and see them. And I can jump back on at the end if we have any questions. We can have a chat then, and I can turn my video back on. Hear me, but my video should be gone so that the slides are a little bit bigger and more clear. And we'll jump into our micronutrient material. So this is the same slide that I had last time for vitamins, just as a recap. Micronutrients are one of the major groups of nutrients that your body needs, along with the macronutrients, like I mentioned, which is protein, fat, and carbs. And the micronutrients include both vitamins and minerals. Last week we talked about vitamins. This week we're talking about minerals. And these both types of micronutrients are supplied through a balanced diet or sometimes through supplements. So essentially, a huge variety of types of foods contain all kinds of vitamins and minerals, but there are certain circumstances where individuals feel they can't get adequate amounts of perhaps specific vitamins or minerals or multiple, and so they may take a supplement in order to meet their body's needs. So last time when we talked about vitamins, I went through and talked about each vitamin, and we discussed why you may or may not need a supplement for each one. I'm doing things a little bit differently with this one because there are much more minerals than there are vitamins. And so we're going to go through them a little bit more quickly. We're going to discuss the food sources and the role that it has in your body for each one. And then we're going to kind of talk about supplements as a whole for all of them together. And I'll talk about sort of some that are common for people to take. But we're not going to dive into every single one just because there's too many and we only have an hour. So if you have questions about supplements, I understand that that's a really interesting topic. And you can certainly ask at the end when we talk about supplements, but just for the sake of time, we'll probably stick to just the food sources and the roles in the body for the minerals, just because there's so many and it's an interesting topic, and we'll kind of touch on supplements at the end, if that's all right with everyone. That would be great. All right, so these essential minerals are basically, there are tons and tons of minerals, and typically if you think of general minerals, you think of what you find in rock formations. Those kind of encompass what you think of when you're thinking about minerals. But the essential minerals encompasses those that are required in our bodies. So there's lots of other minerals that exist and serve lots of other purposes in our world and in nature, but not all of them are needed in our body for our health and for certain functions of our body. So the list of essential minerals are those that we do need, that we need to take from food or from supplements in order to have our body functioning properly. And this is a pretty comprehensive list. There are always certain arguments that there are other minerals that we need in our body that aren't on this list. But of course, I couldn't cover every single one. So these are really the most common ones that are needed in our body. There may be some that you know of that are missing from this, and I'm aware of that. There are definitely arguments that other types of minerals we do require, but these are the main ones. These are the most commonly accepted essential minerals, so that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So these types of essential minerals can be referred to as either major or trace. So major minerals are needed in larger amounts than trace minerals. So the list on the left, we need more of these types of minerals, like sodium, chloride, potassium, calcium, phosphorus, and magnesium. The other column on the right are ones that we just need in small or trace amounts. But it's important to keep in mind that the amount that we need, whether it's a major or a trace, does not indicate how important it is. So just because we need more of some of the minerals that are in the major category does not mean that those are more important minerals. It just means that your body needs less of them in order to function, or more of them, sorry, and less of the other ones. So they are all equally important. They all serve lots of different really important roles in your body. We just need certain types in different amounts. So that's kind of how we've categorized them that way. All right. So I have one more poll here. This one is not for statistics purposes. This is just for fun. So feel free to answer if you'd like, but no obligation to this one. And then if you want to share in the chat which ones you're taking, that would be great too. So I'll put the poll live, and I'd love to know if you currently take any mineral supplements. So I just showed you the slide with the different types of minerals. So if you saw any minerals on there that you know that you take as a supplement, let me know. If not, then let me know that as well. And then in the chat function, if you feel like sharing with the group which minerals you do take, then you can do so. But again, definitely no obligation, only if you feel like sharing. Looks like we have kind of a 50-50 spread so far, 45-55. So we do have quite a few of you that are taking mineral supplements. Let's see what people are taking. Yeah, vitamin C. So vitamin C is actually not a mineral, that's a vitamin. So we covered vitamin C in our presentation last week. Same thing with fish oil. Fish oil is not a vitamin or a mineral, it's an oil. So that's a supplement, but it's not a mineral supplement. Zinc is definitely a mineral, so that one falls under there. Magnesium and calcium and iron, those are all minerals, so that's great. I see there's a question here on brands. Really, I have no suggestion on brands because any brand that you see sold in Canada that's a vitamin or a mineral supplement has been approved by Health Canada. So we're very strict with the types of supplements that we sell in the store. And if you see a type of supplement on the shelves, then it means that it's been approved. So there's really no need to focus on certain brands. Some people have preference towards certain types, but in general, they're all safe. They're all effective. It really would just matter your own personal preferences and the amounts that are in each one. You may like a certain brand because it has a certain amount of different types of minerals or vitamins, but other than that, there's really no reason that one would be better than the other. Okay, wonderful. So thanks so much, everyone, for sharing. That's great. Very interesting to know that you all take a few different types of minerals. So we're going to jump in and we're going to talk about first the major minerals. So like I said, for each one, we're going to go through and we're going to cover what it does in the body and then the types of foods that supply that mineral. And I'm just going to mention again, because I know supplements is a really popular topic, but we're not focusing on the supplements right now. We'll talk a little bit about them at the end as a group in general, but I'm not going to focus in on supplements for each individual one for the sake of time. So here we go. We'll start off with sodium. So sodium is an electrolyte, which means that it balances fluid in the body. So because of that, that's why it's so popularly associated with blood pressure, because sodium plays a really big role in impacting your blood pressure because it's balancing the amount of fluid in your body. So when we eat lots and lots of sodium, we see an increase in blood pressure. And that's why sometimes people have issues with high blood pressure or hypertension as a result of high sodium intake. And that's why often individuals will recommend that someone maybe decreases their intake of sodium if they're suffering from hypertension. So sodium is actually only one part of salt. So it's the Na part of the NaCl, which is the chemical compound that makes up sodium chloride, which is table salt. So it's really only half of that compound. And chloride is the other half, which we're going to talk about here in a moment. So sodium is actually one of the few minerals that humans as a group regularly consume in excess. So we definitely eat a lot of table salt. We add it to a lot of different foods because it improves the flavor. And as a result, we often eat actually more sodium than we need. And that's why it's often linked with higher blood pressure and all of that. So it also has a few other roles. It helps to send nerve impulses. It's needed for muscle contractions and so much more. So it's important to not think of sodium as all bad. It definitely has really important roles in our body, but there's just no need to eat it in the amounts that we eat it. And that's where you start to see some of those negative consequences with high blood pressure. So in terms of where we can get sodium in our diet, the number one way is salt. So table salt, so we add salt to our foods, which is sodium chloride, as I mentioned, that is going to give you sodium. And then processed foods are also foods that often have high amounts of added sodium or salt. And then C, vegetables, so any type of vegetable like kelp, for example, seaweed, would have quite a bit of sodium because it comes from the sea, which has salt. So that's kind of the main things. Really, any type of food that's like a packaged processed food is very likely to have sodium in it. So that's why it's so common for us to consume sodium in a great amount. I see someone here has mentioned the use of sea salt and Himalayan salt. There are lots of different types of salt, but they do all have sodium, and they're really all fairly comparable in terms of the amount of sodium. So one is not necessarily better than the other. They just have different purposes for cooking and such. So sometimes recipes will call for one or the other, but they all really contain the same amount of sodium in the end. So it's not necessarily that one's better than the other. Oftentimes, though, they can be more expensive than table salt, so that's something to keep in mind. And yes, it is a preservative, absolutely. So it's used in a lot of different types of foods. And yes, it's very important to drink lots of water if you're consuming sodium. Okay, so now we'll talk about chloride. So like I said, chloride is the other half of the compound that makes up sodium chloride or table salt. So it's kind of, it links together with sodium to make salt. Chloride is also an electrolyte, so it plays a similar role in balancing fluid in the body along with sodium. It also plays a role in the production of hydrochloric acid in the stomach, so it is really essential to digestion because this acid that we produce in our stomach, HCl or hydrochloric acid, is essential in order to break down the foods and the compounds that we consume and allow our bodies to digest them properly. So chloride plays a big role in that. So where we can get chloride, so again, it comes along with sodium in that sodium chloride. So table salt is probably the big one, along with processed foods, same thing as sodium. So it kind of comes along with it in terms of where we get it in the food. All right, next up is potassium. So potassium is also an electrolyte, so it also plays a role in balancing fluid in the body. It also helps with normal nervous system function, muscle contraction, and helps to maintain the heart rhythm and sends nerve impulses. So it's really important in keeping your heart health and the strength of your heart and the beat of your heart to maintain that beat. And it also may lower your blood pressure and have a benefit to your bones. So potassium is kind of one that's often talked about as the thing that you can consume to kind of fight against the effect of sodium. So it kind of has that opposite effect where it lowers your blood pressure instead of increasing your blood pressure. So sometimes individuals are recommended to increase their amounts of potassium foods in their diet if they're trying to lower their blood pressure and decrease the amount of sodium foods. So potassium foods, the most common one that people talk about is bananas, but that's by no means the only source of potassium. And in fact, it's not even necessarily the best source of potassium. There are tons and tons of fruits and vegetables and other types of foods that have potassium. So just as a few examples, we have bananas, oranges, potatoes, tomatoes, carrots, all kinds of other fruits and vegetables. Legumes like your lentils and beans would have potassium, whole grains, dairy products, nuts, meats, and seafoods. So a huge variety of different types of foods that are going to provide you with potassium for that blood pressure lowering effect, as well as all of those other important roles that potassium plays. On to calcium. So calcium plays a really big role, as we likely all know, in building and protecting our bones and our teeth. So that is what it is absolutely most famous for. As a result of that, it can help to prevent what's called osteoporosis, which is basically just the degradation of your bones making them weaker and more prone to breaking. So if we consume calcium, we're preventing that, and we're having stronger, healthier bones for longer into our life and into older age. It also plays other roles, though, so it's not just important for bones. It plays a role in muscle contraction and relaxation, so it allows us to kind of lift and move our bodies around. It helps with blood clotting, which is really important to prevent us from bleeding out. It plays a role in normal nervous system functions. It helps to maintain healthy blood pressure and plays a role in immune system health. I'm going to be mentioning quite a few minerals that play a role in immune system health, and I'll just mention here, since this is the first one where that's come up, that there is no one mineral or type of supplement that you could take that will, completely boost your immune system and make you, healthy and prevent you from getting all of your illnesses. So instead, it's more about the combined effect. So all kinds of minerals, there's going to be lots here today that we'll talk about, help with your immune system. And as a group, they just generally help to strengthen it and keep it functioning properly so that you're less likely to become sick. But just by taking a supplement of any of those nutrients does not necessarily mean that you're going to protect yourself from any sort of illness. So just wanted to mention that there. And yes, you're right, Tyler, that vitamin D is also good for bones, which I mentioned in my vitamin presentation last week. So they're very closely linked. And the reason why vitamin D is associated here is that it helps with the absorption of calcium. So calcium cannot be properly absorbed without the help of vitamin D. So we need them both in order to maintain the strength and health of our bones. All right, so sources of calcium. The big one is dairy products, most common one that people know. So your milk, yogurt, cheese, those are all really good sources of calcium. And we also often supplement these types of dairy products with vitamin D to help with the absorption of your calcium. But we also get it in other sources. So any canned fish that has the bones in will provide calcium as a result of the bones from that fish. Nuts and seeds have calcium. And legumes, leafy green vegetables, fortified foods. So fortified foods is basically just anything that has calcium added to it that we have created. So we've manually added calcium to that food. So for example, breakfast cereals, juices, and soy products like tofu or soy milk. And yes, Tyler, you do need vitamin D and calcium together. And yes, a lot of times they come together in supplements. That's a good point as well. You got it. All right, on to phosphorus. So phosphorus helps to protect your bones and teeth as well. So it is not quite so famous for this. People don't generally know that phosphorus is important in bone health. Most of the time we just talk about calcium, but phosphorus is also really important in building healthy bones. It also plays a role in energy processing. So it helps basically convert what you eat, your foods and your calories, into energy. So it helps you to get that energy in order to move and exercise and be on the go. It's also a part of phospholipids, which help to carry lipids, which are basically fats in the blood. So they help to carry around the fats in the blood and deliver them to your cells, and they move other nutrients into and out of your cells as well. So they really just help to carry things around and make sure that all the cells get everything that they need in order to do their jobs properly. Just seeing if we have any other comments here. Gotcha. Yeah. So definitely it's important to keep in mind, supplements versus food sources and make sure that you have a balance there and make sure that you're getting enough one way or the other. That's a good point. Okay. Phosphorus sources. So these are the places that we can get phosphorus. Typically, the most common source is your meats, your fish, and your poultry. So it's maybe a little bit more difficult to get if you're a vegetarian or a vegan. But we generally don't have too much of an issue getting this in the amounts that are required. So we also get it from processed foods. So it's often added to processed foods, particularly processed meats. We have quite a bit of it in your processed meats. We also get it in dairy, eggs, liver, some vegetables, almonds, and grains like bread, rice, and oats. So lots of different ways that we can consume phosphorus. in a variety of different foods, even if you don't eat meat. All right, so magnesium. Magnesium is important for proper muscle contractions and nerve impulses. It also plays a role in blood sugar control, so helping to make sure that your blood sugar doesn't get too high or too low. It kind of helps to maintain it. It plays a role in regulating your blood pressure, helping with blood clotting, improving immune system health, and maintaining healthy, strong bones and teeth. Similar to phosphorus and calcium, it also has a role in this as well. So just because calcium is the most famous one does not mean that it's the only thing that's required to get healthy bones. We need lots of other minerals as well that play equally important roles in that. So sources of magnesium, typically they include your nuts and seeds, legumes, whole grains and dark leafy vegetables, milk, seafood, avocado is a common vegetable that has magnesium, and chocolate, particularly dark chocolate, will also be a source of magnesium. Okay, so that wraps up the major minerals, and now we'll move on to the trace minerals. So like I mentioned before, when we talk about trace minerals, these are just ones that are needed in slightly less amounts than the major, but still are really very important. So the first one on this list is iron. And I want to point out that iron is actually kind of one that is sort of an in-between. So although it is in the trace mineral category, it is needed in higher amounts than most of the other trace minerals. So it's probably like the biggest requirement of all of the trace minerals is iron. So keeping that in mind. So iron, the functions of iron include the formation of hemoglobin, and hemoglobin is basically just something that helps to carry oxygen from the lungs to the body cells. So just think of it as sort of a transport for oxygen. So it's really very important because our body needs oxygen to survive. And if we can't get the oxygen from our lungs to every single cell in our body, then those cells are going to die because they're not getting enough oxygen. So it's very, very important to make sure that we have enough iron in order to form enough hemoglobin to have our body do these important functions. Iron also plays a role in energy metabolism and helps in the formation of amino acids, collagen, neurotransmitters, and hormones. So those are a lot of fancy words, but basically it just means that iron helps in the formation of a lot of different types of cells and important aspects of our body for proper function. All right, so sources of iron. Iron sources include typically any type of meat, fish, poultry, and shellfish will have iron, particularly your red meats like steak. Eggs also have iron. Nuts. Oh, I've got eggs there twice. My bad. Definitely eggs. Legumes, dark leafy green vegetables, and enriched whole grain products. So again, enriched would mean that it's been like added, so enriched with iron in the whole grain product. So many women of childbearing age do not get enough iron as a result of the menstrual cycle because iron is a component of blood. So it's important that anyone of childbearing age, a female, make sure that they're getting enough iron through food or through a supplement. And iron is also harder to absorb from plants. So I talked a bit about this in my vegan and vegetarian diets webinar. If you're interested in learning more about those types of diets, then I'd recommend you watch that one. But because iron is harder to absorb from plants, it's often suggested that vegetarians try to get twice the amount of recommended iron from their foods, from their plant sources of iron, so those dark leafy vegetables or legumes or nuts, just to make sure that they're absorbing enough because it's not always as easily absorbed when it comes from those vegetarian sources. All right, zinc. So zinc is required for the formation of lots of different enzymes and proteins. It helps to free vitamin A from its storage in the liver. So vitamin A gets stored in the liver. It's a fat-soluble vitamin that we talked about last week. And zinc is really important for allowing that to be freed from the liver and then used. So we mentioned last week how vitamin A is stored so that we can use it kind of at a later time so that we're not getting deficient in it. and so we need zinc in order to be able to use that's been stored. It also has an important role in immune system function, wound healing, and it helps to improve your taste and smell. So that's kind of a fun one there. And zinc sources, sources. So zinc comes from a variety of different foods, often comes from your meats, poultry, and seafood. It comes in fortified cereals, so we do add zinc to certain types of cereals. It also comes from beans, nuts, whole grains, dairy, and a variety of different types of vegetables. All right, next up is iodine. So iodine is required for the synthesis of thyroid hormones. And as a result of that, it helps to prevent what is known as goiter. So goiter is what is shown in this picture here. That's a fairly minor case. You can see just above where her index finger is lying, there's a bit of a bump on this lady's throat. So a goiter is basically some sort of abnormal enlargement of your thyroid gland. So the thyroid gland is right there in your throat. It's a butterfly-shaped gland at the base of your neck, just below the Adam's apple. And so goiter is basically an inflammation or a enlargement of that gland. They're usually quite painless. It's usually not something that is painful, but it can cause a cough and make it difficult to swallow or breathe as it gets bigger, and impairs the esophagus from breathing properly. So it's really important that we avoid it for that reason. Of course, we want to make sure that everyone's breathing easily. So iodine is really important to prevent this from happening. It also helps to set your body temperature, and it influences nerve and muscle function, reproduction, and growth. So back in 1924, we decided that because goiter was such an issue with people not being able to breathe, we wanted to have a way to make sure that everyone was getting enough iodine, because iodine is really the main way that we can prevent goiter from occurring, that inflammation of the thyroid gland. So in 1924, we decided that since pretty much everybody eats salt in some way, shape, or form, we add it to so many different types of foods, it was decided that we would add iodine to our table salt. So pretty much all salt that's sold in Canada, you'll notice that it says that it's actually iodized. So that means that it has iodine added to the table salt. So that is one of the main ways that we now get iodine in our diet, because it can be difficult to get otherwise. It's not a common one in food, so mainly it comes from your table salt. And same thing with processed foods. It's the reason that it's in processed foods is because it's in the salt. So it's in the salt that gets added to those processed foods. It's also sometimes found in seafood, for example, kelp and other types of seafood, and grains. So those are really the two ways that it's found naturally. Otherwise, it's found in the foods that we've added the iodine to the salt. So that's how we get it for the most part. Really, really important. So that's a really good example of a public health intervention where we identified a problem. It was kind of an issue for a large amount of people that were having goiter and experiencing the symptoms. And so we decided to intervene in a way that would ensure that it would solve the problem for the majority of the population. And it was a very, very effective public health intervention. All right. Selenium. So this one is an antioxidant. So that means that it helps to neutralize unstable molecules that can damage cells. So basically it attaches to these unstable molecules and makes sure that they can't do the damage that they're there to do. So antioxidants are really important. They're often known for having a possible impact in reducing different types of cancers and other chronic diseases. It also helps to regulate thyroid hormone activity, so it kind of works with iodine in that way. So where can we get selenium? It comes from organ meat, seafood, meat, walnuts, Brazil nuts, grain products, mushrooms, dairy, and eggs. So lots of different types of products, both plant and animal sources, that we can get selenium. And I see there's been a bit of a chat going here about iron and using a gold ring to rub it on your skin. I see Jason has said it's an old wives' tale. I believe that you're correct, Jason. From what I know, I've never really heard that that's an accurate test for whether or not you're low in iron. I think it's just sort of something that, it may or may not work on certain people, but I don't know that it's scientifically accurate. So it may give you a rough idea, but it definitely is not a scientific method. Like, that's not a way that they would use to test it in the hospitals. For example, they would definitely just actually test your blood to have a more accurate reading. Okay, moving on to copper. So copper plays an important role in iron metabolism. So we mentioned the importance of iron. Well, copper has a really big role in making sure that iron can do its job properly. It also plays a role in immune system function, helps to make red blood cells, and is part of many different types of enzymes. So we can get copper from animal liver, shellfish, nuts and seeds, whole grains, legumes, prunes, cocoa, and black pepper. So quite a few different food sources of of copper. All right. Manganese. So manganese helps, as do many minerals, to form healthy bones and teeth. It also helps to metabolize amino acids, cholesterol, and carbohydrates, and is a part of many different types of enzymes, as is quite common for these minerals. So we get manganese from fish, nuts and seeds, legumes, whole grains, leafy vegetables, tea and coffee. So probably one of the common ones that's talked about a lot is tea and coffee in order to get your manganese. So that is a common source, but there's lots of other ones that we know of as well. So this is a fairly easy one to get. All right, chromium. So chromium plays a role in glucose and lipid metabolism. It helps to enhance the activity of insulin, which means it's helping to maintain normal blood glucose levels. So the blood sugar in your body, it helps to maintain your levels at a normal level. And it's needed to free the energy from glucose. So glucose comes from carbohydrates, and it's our main source of energy in the body in the form of sugar. And in order to free the energy from that glucose, we need chromium to help us. So it's a really important mineral in order to make sure that we're getting adequate energy from the foods that we consume. So we get chromium from a huge variety of foods, lots of vegetables, meat, poultry, fish, eggs, potatoes, cereals, nuts, cheese, broccoli, grape juice, whole grains. Again, all of these lists, they're not comprehensive in terms of the food sources. There's obviously lots more different types of foods that have all of these minerals that I've been talking about. But these are just sort of the most common ones that I'm sharing with you today. All right, molybdenum. So this one is part of several enzymes. It's probably one of the least commonly known minerals, and it doesn't really do a whole lot other than the fact that it's just a part of lots of different enzymes, and enzymes have lots of different roles in the body. So it helps those enzymes to do their jobs, and that's really what it's there for. And we can get it from legumes, nuts, grain products, milk, and leafy greens. All right, so that I think is the last of our minerals. We blasted through those pretty quickly, but hopefully you learned a little bit about the different types of minerals, where we get them, and what they do, and all the different important roles of them in the body. So you will notice, similar to what I did with the vitamins, I did not talk about the exact amounts that are needed in your body. So I did not mention the DRIs, or dietary reference intake. So those intakes are they're based on the amount that we need to prevent deficiencies and to lower chronic risk. And there's a DRI for every single vitamin and mineral. And basically all it is just it tells you how much an average human should consume in order to make sure that you have enough of that vitamin or mineral, and to prevent the risk of chronic disease by not having enough or having too much. But I didn't go over those numbers because they're different for every single mineral, and there's no way any of you would remember any of them. And they can be looked up easily online. The important thing to know is that we need them all, and we can get them all from food. So it's not really important to know the exact like milligram amounts of each one, because no one's going to really be measuring how much of each mineral or vitamin they're getting from their diet, because it's really hard to know unless you're using supplements only. It's hard to know how much you're getting from, say, fruit and vegetables or meats or whatever type of food you're consuming that has a variety of minerals in them. It's really hard to know how much of each one. So the important thing is to just follow a balanced diet and have a variety of foods. And for the most part, most minerals are not difficult to consume in adequate amounts. So we do get quite a variety and adequate amounts of vitamins and minerals. Down there, it should say vitamins and minerals, not just vitamins, because obviously we're talking about both here, through a balanced diet. I will also mention that for each mineral and vitamin, there is a tolerable upper intake level, or it's referred to as the UL, and that is the maximum level that is likely to pose no risk of adverse effects. So this means that there's a level of each vitamin and mineral that we shouldn't exceed. So we should only eat up until the UL, so that we don't have any negative effects from any of the vitamins or minerals. Lisa, I see you're asking if excess minerals leave our bodies daily. Not necessarily. So our bodies have the ability to store minerals for the most part in our body. So unlike water-soluble vitamins, where we just urinate out those water-soluble vitamins every day, minerals is not quite like that. So they definitely can leave the body in certain cases and in certain ways, but it's not like a daily thing where our body just excretes excess minerals. Oftentimes we do store minerals in a variety of different ways throughout the body. So that's why it is important to make sure that we're aware of the upper levels and that we're not exceeding them, so that our bodies are not storing excess, and that can potentially cause adverse effects in our body. Alrighty. So supplements, I did mention that we would talk briefly about it, so we will here. Again, I'm not going through each individual one because there's just simply too many to talk about. But basically, what I want you to take away from this is that minerals, same with vitamins, are best supplied through specific foods that are rich with that mineral. So we went through each one. We talked about all the different types of foods that provide each individual mineral. And I'm hoping that you were kind of sensing a pattern throughout this presentation. And you probably noticed that a lot of different minerals came from a lot of very common foods and a lot of very similar types of foods. So you probably noticed there was a lot of fruits and vegetables, a lot of different types of meats, a lot of whole grains that were mentioned, a lot of legumes were mentioned. So basically, if you're following a balanced diet that's including those healthy whole foods, then you're very likely to be getting enough of each specific mineral. So you saw that they all come from these wide variety of foods. So you don't necessarily need to pay attention to each individual one. You just really need to look at it as an overall diet to make sure that you're meeting your dietary requirements of each mineral individually. So just to mention again, the diet as food alone can absolutely meet the body's mineral requirements for most people. However, supplements are sometimes used when recommendations are not adequately being met. So there are, of course, always certain circumstances where an individual is unable to meet their dietary requirements, whether that's because they don't have access to adequate amounts of certain types of foods. Like, for example, if you live somewhere where fresh fruit and vegetables are difficult to obtain, or food is scarce, then a supplement may be in your best interest. Or sometimes people have different types of chronic diseases or impairments that mean that they are unable to properly absorb vitamins and minerals. And in those cases, definitely supplements may be wise. So there's always exceptions, but for the most part, it's important to remember that we can get most of our vitamins and minerals just through food alone. And that's the best way and the healthiest way to make sure that we're getting these vitamins and minerals. Okay. So just wanted to go through a few of the common supplements that people take. So calcium is one of the minerals that is probably one of the most common supplements that people take. And this one is mainly taken if someone does not eat an adequate amount of dairy. So if you're a vegetarian or vegan that doesn't eat dairy, then you might need a calcium supplement. it does have a very important role in bone health. So some people find that they feel a bit safer to make sure that their bones are staying healthy if they have a calcium supplement. So that's a common one. Iron is another common one for women in particular. As I mentioned, it's really important for any females of childbearing age to make sure that they're getting enough iron, or else you may feel really, really tired. You may not have a lot of energy as a result of being iron deficient. And that can lead to iron deficiency anemia, which we definitely don't want. So it's a common supplement for women, particularly, to take iron as a supplement if they're feeling that they're not getting enough through their diet. And lastly, I want to touch on multivitamins. So multivitamins often have a variety of both minerals and vitamins. Even though they're just called multivitamins, they usually do have multiple minerals as well. So the name is a bit deceiving, but they do often contain a variety of minerals. So for example, a common multivitamin might include calcium, copper, iron, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, selenium, and zinc. That's just one that I found online. It contained all of those different minerals, but each different brand of multivitamin would have a different amount of minerals and vitamins and different types. So you always want to make sure you're looking at the labels and finding out what has which minerals or vitamins to make sure that you're getting the ones that you're looking for. Okay. So we'll talk just briefly about healthy eating. So as I mentioned, the main takeaway from both the vitamin and mineral presentations that we've done is that it's important to just follow a healthy, balanced diet, and that will usually ensure that you're getting adequate amounts of vitamins and minerals in your diet. So if we're consuming adequate nutrients and adequate energy, nutrients plus energy is typically following a healthy diet. So we want to focus on nutrient-rich foods that provide nutrients, which basically means your macro and micronutrients, and provide you with adequate energy to get through your day. And basically, if you eat a variety of foods and follow a balanced diet where you're eating lots of different foods from all the different food categories, then you're more than likely also getting a variety of micronutrients. And for the most part, they're well distributed enough in the different types of foods that you're probably getting all of the different micronutrients that you need. Unless you have spoken to a healthcare professional that has told you otherwise, then this is probably more common for most people, that they're getting all of the micronutrients that they need through food if they're following a balanced diet. So I just want to touch here on Canada's food guide. And really the takeaway, I hope, from this entire presentation is that we do get vitamins and minerals in all kinds of foods. And if you eat a balanced diet, you will get them all. So you can see here, Canada's food guide suggests that we fill half of our plate with fruits and vegetables, a quarter of our plate with protein foods, whether that's animal protein or plant protein, either way, and a quarter of our plate with whole grain foods. And as you will probably have noticed, like I said, from the lists of foods that have all the different minerals in them, if we consume this type of a balanced diet that's explained here on Canada's food guide, then more than likely you will be consuming all of the different types of foods that we talked about today, and you will have a fairly good balance of different micronutrients. Okay, so I'll pop back on here. So that wraps up this presentation pretty much. So we do have one more statistics poll before you all go off with your day. So I will share this one with you now, and I just want to know if you feel that you can apply what you learned in your daily life. So again, this one is completely anonymous, and I really would appreciate if everyone could answer. The strongly disagree is at the top, strongly agree is at the bottom, and just let me know how you feel about this presentation. That would be great. Again, completely anonymous. Your name is not connected to your response. And while everyone makes sure they fill that one out, I'll continue on here with the last few slides. So here we have a resource slide of all the different resources that are available to you as individuals that are affiliated with the Canadian Armed Forces. So lots of things that can help you to get the support that you need anytime, but particularly during this global pandemic. So if you feel that you need any of these resources, feel free to take a photo of these resources so that you have them on hand if you would like to do that. They're always there and always available for you if you need that support. And from there, that really is the end of it. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. Please do let me know if you have any last questions or comments. I'd be happy to stick around for a few moments and chat with you all. But otherwise, then please feel free to log off now, as long as you've filled out both of my statistics polls, the first one from the beginning and the last one that I just made live now. I would really appreciate that. And other than that, you are free to go. So thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.